welcome to the Sports Join. And today, I don't know, the guests that we have for Voices of Cricket, the new series on the channel, is actually a voice that is synonymous with Test cricket. It's synonymous with the beautiful game, and of course, his banter with his colleagues on the Test match special is something that we all look forward to. It makes the viewing experience or the listening experience 10 times better for me personally. We have Mr. Jonathan Agnew, the host of the most popular cricket radio broadcast in the world for us, and the voice of the gentleman's game in the UK and beyond. Sir, yours is a voice, as I said, is synonymous with the Test match special, and your legendary exchanges with the likes of Mr. Boycott, Sir Alistair Cook, Mr. Michael Vaughan and company are etched in our memories forever. We are ever so grateful to have the chance to speak with you, and in these challenging and tough times, we hope that you and your family and your loved ones are keeping safe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's a pleasure. I wish I was in Chennai with the England team, as I should be, rather than sitting here on a very wet and rainy morning in Melton Mowbray, but that's the way things are at the moment.
Yes, I mean, of course, these are the challenges, and I think taking a cue from you as well, I think it will be the best way for us to start would be to address the current realities, the challenges we face, whether it's as a spectator, whether it's as a fan, I'm sure the players and the staff and support staff are facing their own challenges, whether they be the mental or physical, or just the duration of time that is required to be spent between travel, between matches and all of that. How has your experience been as a broadcaster in these COVID-19 uncertain and challenging times? And how difficult have you found it to actually become a technical expert as well, to make sure all of the electronics are being right?
That's a very good question, actually. Well, it's just been very different, hasn't it? And I think, I think cricket has tried really hard. And by cricket, I mean it's everyone, the authorities, everyone involved, the players. You've got to give them a lot of credit, I think. Have just tried really hard to keep the show on the road, and that for us last summer was all about being in the bubble, the bio bubble. So people like me, the broadcasters, were actually included. Not quite. There were sort of three levels of bubbles, if you like. There was the players, but in a sanctum where we couldn't go. So we wanted to interview players. We had to do so from 2 meters and long microphones and so on. But we ourselves are also sort of locked away in the same hotel as the players, for some weeks at a time. And maybe that's given us a little more of a understanding, sympathy, I think, definitely for the players and what they're going through at the moment. I mean, look at England's players as we speak. They've already been through that experience. A number of them played in the IPL, of course. Well, that's their choice, people might say, but they're earning a living and they're entitled to go there. So the UAE, they were in that bubble for weeks. Then they went to South Africa, many of them. They were in another bubble there that actually broke down. They came home for a couple of weeks, and then New Year's Day, off they go to Sri Lanka. More bubble, they're locked up again, and then they've come out of their hotel in India after 6 days of not being allowed out of their rooms, apart from for 1 hour in the gym separately. So they haven't actually seen each other for 6 days, and they've got 4 days to go until a test match. Now, I think we have to have some sort of sympathy, understanding, or certainly take into account if they're not playing as well as they might. I mean, it must be incredibly frustrating for them. And then the Indian players as well, they've had the same thing. Australia, I mean, it's sort of a counter argument with what they've produced there, which I suspect might have been in no small part due to being very closely together and getting a real bond. And what they did there was fantastic. And England have got to try and emulate that in India. But it's tough. And let's hope the vaccines are rolling out, and let's hope that this is a short-lived experience that we'll look back on in a few years' time and wonder if it really happened.
Yeah, and just adding on to your point, we had the pleasure, the absolute honor as well of speaking to Mr. Gautam Bhimani very recently, and he mentioned for him personally, it's the smell of the freshly cut grass that he misses the most. He says when you're on the ground, there is a vibe to a match. There is a feeling that is associated with the match, with the 22 players on the ground, or the 11 and the 2 batsmen as well. And that is something for him that he misses the most. And we also had just a cheeky reference to that Kusal Pereira dismissal that unfortunately was missed as well. But all of that into account, as a broadcaster, how challenging, how difficult do you think it has been for you?
Well, it's been different.
A slight disconnect?
Absolutely. It's been different. I mean, for the Sri Lanka Test series, I was in here at 4 in the morning, You can see I've got one dog there behind me. I've actually got three. So it was dark, it's cold, and I would be commentating off a screen. You talk about technology. We've actually, the BBC's got a brilliant piece of technology that enables people wherever they are to see the pictures in time with each other. So, I mean, satellite TV, as we know, it could all be on a bit of a strange lag and so on. But this very clever piece of technology meant that we actually were commentating off the screen that I'm talking to you now through this particular piece of software. It's called Swift. So it meant that whoever I was working with, we were watching and hearing the noise from Gaul at exactly the same time. Didn't matter what TV was doing, we were working off that. Now, on your friend's point, exactly right. I mean, working off the telly, as it were, you only get to see what the director wants you to see. Cricket's like a game of chess. You've got to see where the fielders are. You've got to know what's going on. The field placings illustrate what the captains are thinking and what the state of the game is. And on the telly, you just don't get that. I know for millions and millions of people, it is the way they're used to watching the game. And it's why sometimes, if I'm honest, social media can be frustrating. You get television viewers shouting at you, and you think, well, wait a minute, actually, I'm here. You're watching on the telly. It's a very detached experience. You might feel that you're in it, and you get wonderful replays, and the commentators tell you exactly what's going on. But if you can't see the game, you can't see it laid out like a chessboard, then you only got a very partial understanding of what's going on. So, yeah, I mean, it was needs must for us, and that was it. And the listeners were understanding. And as I said before, let's hope that it's only a short-lived experience, because it is nothing like this, nothing like the real thing of being there. And I know that people watching this would much rather be able to go to the cricket themselves and watch it on the telly or listen to the radio. And hopefully those days will come back as well.
Yeah, and a little bit of a positive spin on that. The Tamil Nadu Cricket Association and, of course, the Gujarat Cricket Association both have been given permission by the state governments for having spectators in the ground. We'll have a few club members in the ground for the first test match, and we hopefully should have spectators from the second match onwards. If that happens, that'll be an amazing experience, almost surreal for us. We've almost forgotten, from all the Premier League that we've been following to the European football matches we've been following and general sport all over the world. Apart from the Australian New Zealand matches, we've not seen fans anywhere. So it'll be amazing if we can get a few fans into the grounds here in India.
It'll make a huge difference. I mean, I had to really say well done to the players last summer in England, because they've actually produced some very good cricket. England, Pakistan, West Indies, Australia, they produced some really good cricket despite there being no atmosphere. A wicket would fall or a four would be hit. I remember a catch being taken at mid-off, a thumping off drive. Jimmy Anderson took the catch. I remember calling it as a catch, but then thinking, oh my God, my eyes gone. Was it a bump ball? Because you're used to the sound. And there was no player reaction either, because the game's a bit dead. And it's one of those moments you think, whoa, what's happened here? And on a normal day, you'd have had 20, 30,000 people shouting and yelling, and it would have been different. So for the players still to produce, I thought, some really good quality cricket was outstanding, under those difficult circumstances. So I'm pleased going to allow spectators back. I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm really sad I'm not going to be there at this new ground in Ahmedabad, because that sounds like a monster. And last time we go to Ahmedabad quite often, but we certainly haven't seen that ground before. So I'll be getting my first view of that off the television.
Yeah, it's a 110,000 capacity stadium. So if that's going to be something like that, even a 50% of that ground is huge. It's just around 50-55,000 people in that ground. That'll be amazing if we're able to get that. On the test match special and the broadcast. Just a first question. The world knows you by your affectionate nickname, Aggers. Your colleagues are known as Daggers, Blowers, and Johners. That's for Charles Clark, Mr. Blofeld, and Brian Johnston, of course. Is there anyone who's been designated as the official name picker, and is the reason behind these household names?
Well, it's a funny thing, because Brian Johnston began it, and it was very much an Oxford University thing when he was there, and everyone had this sort of ers on the end of their names. And so he introduced that, not to everybody, because we had Fred Truman, of course, was the Frederick, Fiery. Trevor Bailey was the Boyle. He created nicknames for people, because in those days, particularly, there were fewer people doing it. And so it was very much a soap opera. And so every character would be the same. They'd turn up the following week, and these days there are more people doing it. So I don't know. I mean, I understand why there's more people doing it, but it was a bit more intimate when there were fewer, because everyone really knew each other, or felt they knew. The listeners really felt they knew each other. So these nicknames developed, but it has become a bit of a cricketing. Every cricketer has a nickname, don't they? And in England particularly, adding an "ers" on the end is probably the easiest way of doing it. You get some strange ones, but usually that's all it is. So yeah, daggers and aggers, and so it's not exclusive. It's not everyone's got an "ers" on the end. Yeah. But I remember Willers was a strange one. Peter Willie. I remember Brian Johnston. That didn't quite work for me. But it's just, I guess it's an informality that makes Test Match Special a popular program, because I hope we don't come across as, being, well, certainly not too white and middle class. That's all changing, and it's about time too. As cricket recognises, diversity, especially in the UK and Australia and other places, is years behind the times, I think. So, Test Match Special now, certainly as far as women commentators, have led the way from that perspective. Isha, Gur, Ebony Brent and others, Charlotte Edwards and so on doing it. So that's important, because I think part of what a commentator's job is, and I think particularly on the radio, TV's a bit different, but particularly on the radio, is to reach out and really embrace a large audience. And they don't have to be cricket lovers. In fact, and a lot of our listeners are not cricket lovers at all. They like the company, they like the chat, they like the banter. And therefore, you do have to reach out to every area of society, I think, to make sure that you're touching people and to get them in the game. All I really want, when people hear me broadcasting on cricket, is for people to think, "Oh, that sounds like good fun, that game, cricket. I might go follow this a bit, or I might even try and play it, or I might be an umpire, or I might score, I might at least go and watch a game." And that, for me, is what my job is. Yes, I've got to be critical at times. As a BBC correspondent, you have to try and stick your neck out and if people aren't playing well, or if there are mistakes being made, or there are incidents on the field, they can be quite challenging. But that's my job. But the rest of the time, I think commentating, it's the second strand to my job. And the commentating is, I really hope, making cricket sound appealing and something that people want to get into.
No, that's such a lovely statement that you made. The most important task for you is, of course, to ensure that there is a level of interest within the listener, within the fan, within the spectator, and that's honestly such a wonderful sentiment to have towards your profession. It just shows why you're such a successful broadcaster, because you view it so differently, and absolutely that's something we'd also try to imbibe in our sessions going forward. And thank you so much for that. Coming back to slightly shifting course here from your broadcasting career to your playing days earlier. Not many bowlers, if any at all, can say that they can count Sir Vivian Richards and Gordon Greenidge as their first two Test scalps. And to top it off, you mentioned coming to India. You dismissed Dilip Vengasarkar and a little man known as Sunil Gavaskar in your ODI debut. Do you have any stories with opponent teams or players you could share with us of your playing days? And also, was it from Mr. Agnew? Was it from Mr. Agnew, the tougher the climb, the stronger he got?
I think did not bowl Sunny in that one day international. I think I clean bowled him. I think so. I got three. It's funny because my international career, if you look at the figures, was a disaster. In that my bowling average was over 90, and the batting average I think was less than 10. So I always tease people and say that actually Wisden made a misprint. They got them the wrong way around, and actually my batting average was over 90, and my bowling average was 10. But I got good people out.
Yes.
It was funny.
If I could add Arvinder De Silva and Arjuna Ranatunga to that list, not two shabby batsmen themselves.
I think it was. It
was 3 for 38, sir, against India. Your debut, 3 for 38.
That's right. I mean, it was frustrating because I know I was good enough to play international cricket. Because I did get good people out. But I never quite felt that I belonged. And when I was playing, so we're talking about going back a million years to the sort of mid 80s, 1984. It was different then, in that there was lots more opportunity. I'm talking about playing for England now, really, in that there were no central contracts. There was a policy of picking people that they thought was on form all of the time. So from county cricket, like I was a county cricketer, I knew there was a real chance if I got some wickets this week, I might play for England next week, which is a great motivator for playing county cricket. And I really believe that county cricket at that time with the brilliant overseas players that we had as well. You mentioned Sonny, of course, he played, but you go through the great list of all West Indian fast bowlers and so on. They were all playing, and the England players are playing county cricket as well. And we were all motivated because we knew we had a chance of playing for England. County cricket was very strong in those days. The downside was that when you got into the England side, if you didn't perform immediately, you were chucked out because the next person would come in. So in the back of my mind when I played that first test was, wow, am I good enough to be here? It was the last test in the Blackwash series at the Oval in 1984. It was an ugly series of fast bowling and broken arms and everything. And it was not a great match to make your debut in, to be honest. But I found myself questioning whether I belonged. I didn't know half the team I was playing with. I'd never met Ian Botham before. He was, of course, playing. David Gower was my captain. He was my county captain. I knew him. And so my international career really, because the tour you mentioned of India came on after that, and I wasn't selected initially for that. I was a reserve. So I was called out halfway through and didn't play any cricket, really. I played one first-class match at Hyderabad where I had the ridiculous figures of something like 20 overs, 5 for 100. And Chris Srikanth just took me apart. But I got wickets again. I got 5 for, but I was so rusty. And then I played the one-day series. You mentioned I got those wickets. And then we went to Australia and played in the first day-nighter, actually, ever at the MCG. When you imagine that was like 100,000 people. It was mad. And I went round the park. So my international career was just like this. There was some decent moments in it, but there were kind of too many lows, really. And so over a really short period of time, the decision was taken that I wasn't good enough, and that was it, which is fine. Perhaps I wasn't, but it's frustrating when you look at people always say, "Wow, look at these people who got out," and I say, "Well, yeah, I could bowl a bit. I got nearly 700 wickets, first-class wickets," and but yeah, when that moment comes. What's interesting though is that now in my job, I look at debutants coming in, young cricketers, not just England, but Indian cricketers coming in, or wherever it may be, and you look at how they adjust to Test cricket, and there are some like I know Ben Stokes, Sam Curran, these sort of people who just walk in, it makes no difference. Joe Root was playing his 100th Test in Chennai. I remember him playing his first in Nagpur, walking out, and he was such a young, slender, like a boy, and yet you knew that he belonged. And I look now at these youngsters living through my experience, because I had doubts in my mind. And if you have got those doubts, if you don't get an instant hit, then you really start to search. If you're a bowler, you start searching for wickets. You can bowl some bad balls. You start to go for runs, and you can feel things slowly unraveling. Whereas if you're one of those real big players, it's just another step up. No matter, we're good enough for this, and off they go. It's interesting, the contrast.
Yeah, and the attitude towards the approach towards the game as well has shifted. Certainly in the subcontinent, I think up until the noughties, maybe even early 2000s, youngsters had the attitude that you're talking about. The slight bit of inhibition while entering the international arena, slight sense of nervousness. But now you see players who come in with the very first ball they're batting, they'll smash it out of the park for a 6, or there's a bowler who'll bowl a knuckle ball as this international debut delivery. It's just unbelievable now what people actually think of.
That's the IPL though, isn't it? When the IPL has transformed cricket in so many ways. I mean, I went to one of the first games in the first series. BBC sent me out. It was Chennai Super Kings against Mumbai Indians. And it was
the marquee match.
It was, but no one knew what it was and what it's going to be like. And Harbhajan was playing for the Mumbai Indians. And the question then was, well, but would Mumbai want Harbhajan? He's from Punjab. Why would he be playing? Would they accept him? And he was up against Matthew Hayden, was playing for Chennai Super Kings. They'd had a big fallout the winter before. Would the Chennai cricket lovers support Matthew Hayden, this big bullying character who'd had a row with Harbhajan a few months before? All those questions were going on. It was a really interesting experience, and I think they've all been answered, haven't they? I mean,
yes.
Indians love cricket, and it's been very clever. The IPL is very clever. I mean, it's a model for franchise cricket. I don't know. I know it'll be interesting to see if it works here. They're trying with 100 here. I'm not so sure, because you have these huge cities where you can, and so do Australia too, of course. So you've got 2 Melbournes, 2 Sydneys. There's that sort of structure to your country and to Australia that there isn't here. I live, my little village is directly between Leicester and Nottingham, right between them. I'm a Leicester man, really, but then 100 yards up the road is Nottingham. We have got a Nottingham-based team for the 100 that embraces all our area here, includes Leicester. They're calling it the Trent Rockets. Now, Trent is a Nottingham word. We in Leicester hate Nottingham. We hate their football teams, we hate their cricket teams, we hate their rugby teams, we hate their shops, we hate their women. We have nothing to do with Nottingham. And yet they're expecting us to embrace this team called Trent, which is just the one word. If someone, so for the ECB, comes to me and says, what's one word you don't use, Aggers, for this? I say Trent. Don't say the word Trent. Well, they've called it Trent. So I'll be very interested to see if it works, because they're trying to follow the IPL model, as everyone is, with a massive success that it's been. It might go on a bit too long, frankly. I mean, if you're an outsider looking in like me, you think, oh, blimey, where is this thing now? Who's playing who and where are we in this? It is a long-running event. You can't understand why it's sold for billions of dollars, for goodness sake. So the 100 will be more concise than that, but they're tinkering with rules and all sorts of strange things to try and make it more appealing. But basically, everyone's trying to follow that IPL structure, not just because of how financially successful it's been, but because the way it's revolutionized the way that the Indian players play predominantly, but also those who are lucky enough to go and play. And again, I think part of the success, or the reason of success for India and Australia recently, was down to that IPL. They're not fazed by anything anymore. You go out there in front of all those huge crowds and massive television audiences and the expectation on you to go out and perform. And there was a time, I guess, late 70s, mid 70s, when I was growing up, when the Indians were a bit of a pushover, frankly.
Yeah.
Dear old Bishop Bailey chucking the white towel out at the West Indies because they didn't fancy batting anymore. They felt a bit soft. They're beautiful spin bowlers, some lovely classy batsmen at the top, but there wasn't that strong underbelly to Indian cricket that there is now, and a lot of that has to be due to the IPL, surely, and the way that they've really developed these very strong, very resilient characters now, used to pressure.
Of course, and this beautifully takes us to the next question. I was going to ask you about. I couldn't have let you go without talking to you about that Australian tour by the Indian team. Of course, this is one of, for us as Indian fans, this is probably right up there amongst the top 2 or 3 Test series we've ever seen.
So it should,
to be very honest. To be very honest, I think it means more than the 2018-19 series, because of the circumstances that were there in this particular series. Probably is equal to that 2001 Eden Gardens comeback and that Chennai Test victory against that all-conquering Australian side. And then for that, and beyond that, I'll have to go really far back. I'll have to go to that 80s team which toured England and won 2-0, could have won 3-0 there. The 70s team that won in West Indies and England itself. So this is a long gap for actual victorious series for India. So not just on India as well. How much of an impact do you think this will have on future visiting teams to Australia, who might now view their chances of getting results more favorably? Because surely it has to have a mental impact. Summer.
Yeah, I mean, we go next. This year for the Ashes, which for us is without wanting to, in any way downplay these 2 series you got against India coming up, home and away. But the Ashes for English cricket represents the end of a cycle, if you like. So it's a 4-year cycle. And that tour to Australia is kind of usually the end of a cycle and then the beginning of the next. And people are judged on their Ashes careers to a certain extent. Michael Vaughan is still an Ashes winning captain. Whenever he's introduced, that's what people call him. So, that matters. It's the big question, India going to Pakistan and beating Pakistan, whether that would rank, whether people would view that as being a bigger thing sort of historically and emotionally than India going to Australia and winning, although that is by far the bigger challenge. And for India to go and beat Australia under those circumstances was incredible. I mean, I remember we were previewing the last Test match because we were on here, and so we're looking ahead at all those injuries, and it's the Gabba, the Australian fast bowling, and all of that stuff. I don't think anyone really gave India a chance, and especially not to win in the manner in which they did. Was incredible, and that's that sort of toughness and resilience that I was talking about. But it does ask some questions about the Australians, and questions that we will have noted from here. Tim Payne, the captaincy, I remember doing a mischievous thing, and it was only mischievous, but I had to answer a mischievous question, or for the year ahead or something. And so I said my mischievous possibility would be that the first test, because we had the first test at the Gabba, which is quite a tough initiation actually for the Ashes. But anyway, who will be shaking Joe Root's hand as captain of Australia? And I said Steve Smith, as a bit of a joke. And it was before the stuff happened, of course, in the crease. But I just felt that Tim Paine's captaincy was kind of wobbling a bit. And that was before this series really got going, because it has been a stopgap. And I do wonder if he will be captain at the Gabba, but I'm pretty sure Steve Smith won't be after what's happened. I think that's proved pretty much that he's got far too much baggage now, and that you know, whatever happened in that crease that day. And I felt quite strongly that he shouldn't have been in there. I have to be honest. I mean, the crease is the batsman's. Yeah, that's his area. If you're not batting, you get out of there. It's got nothing to do with you. But it did split quite an argument, didn't it? But he had no right to be there. Get out. You know, behave yourself. And especially for him, under so much scrutiny, I was surprised he did that, I must say. But it just showed, I thought, that Australians, when they're under the cosh, when they're at home and they're getting a bit of stick and they're expected to win and they're not, you know, they aren't the big, hard, tough characters. I mean, some are, but a lot of them are not these big, tough, strong characters that they're supposed to be. And it certainly, I thought, undermined some of this stuff we were hearing after Sandpaper Gate about the way we're looking at the way we play. And I mean, the sledging from Payne, I thought, was pathetic. You know, what captain of a test team saying that to a highly respected player? I mean, Ravi Ashwin, crikey, he's one of the most respected players in the game. Why would you say things like that to Ravi Ashwin? I mean, it just shows they don't like the pressure very much. And so England must take note of that when we go there in December, and you know, hope for a bit of luck, hope for some good fortune, but definitely try and follow the Indian example.
Yeah, and with the pace battery that England has, I'm sure Australians would once again be circumspect of giving not just the Australian pacers, but the English pacers at bouncy and green wickets. They veered away from that versus India because perhaps they felt like both pace bowling attacks were on par, and I think that's one of the biggest changes I've seen in the Australian mentality in the past 20 years. I think they started slowly but surely started questioning their might with the ball, I guess. Coming back, sorry, you were saying something?
I was going to say, but hasn't it totally changed the makeup of India as well?
Of course.
The fact that India suddenly has got this incredible pace attack. India, pace attack? Really? I remember Abid Ali plodding in and bowling at about 40 miles an hour. That was the opening bowling. And then the spinners would come on and that would be it. I mean, now look at the pace attack that India has. It's incredible. And we always wondered, you know, those of us outside the subcontinent, why it was that Pakistan always had these great reputation of fantastic fast bowlers, and yet India didn't. And it was you couldn't really work out. I suppose the emphasis was very much, I mean, the batsmen have always been the superstars, haven't they, of Indian cricket. Everyone wants to be a batsman. And then the spinners, it's kind of traditional. But now, you know, the stuff about physicality and stuff is absolute nonsense. You know, these fast bowlers are serious fast bowlers, and that just opens up a whole new plan of attack and strategy for India, because no one's going to put green seaming pitches out for them anymore. Be very interesting to see what England do next summer, you know, because generally India always put a bit of grass on, but of course that backfired last time at Lords. They put some grass on. England bowled horribly. Ishant Sharma bowled superbly, and won the game. So even back then, you know, things were looking a bit different. But for India to have the fast bowlers that they have in their armoury now just makes them an all-round team.
Yeah, of course, and I think massive credit must go to this team management and the captaincy under Virat Kohli, because he was always focused on having a good pace battery. Just your few memories. We'll be getting to the final few questions now. So Ben Stokes, I'm sure that for me, I know winning the World Cup is, of course, huge for a nation, especially for England, considering how desperately the country wanted that 50-over World Cup. But the highlight of the summer was that Test match at Headingley. It was unbelievable what happened there, and you know, he smashed a cover drive for 4, and England went on to that historic triumph at Leeds at Headingley, of course. Rishabh Pant followed suit with a check drive at the Gabba, and these are two matches which have probably been the best adverts for Test cricket in the recent past. What are some of your favorite memories from in your time covering cricket as a broadcaster beyond these two? I'm sure. Personally, I've seen that particular clip of you, Alistair Cook and Glenn McGrath commentating on the final few deliveries at Headingley so many times. Everyone, I'm sure Anurag and Pratnesh, both of whom they were watching, they've seen that on loop and repeat, and we couldn't believe that day. Believe me, we as Indians also love it when Australians lose. and I'm sure you would echo the same sentiment. So we followed it very intently, and beyond that, any particular moments that are etched in your memory as
Well, I've got lots. I mean, yes, you're right. I mean, the lion run out was just
well? Oh
one
yeah.
of the most ridiculous pieces of theatre. Leach should have been run out by yards. And that test match for me, it was clearly, given where England came from to win it, and given that 2 days before it ended, we were doing this is possibly the end of English Test cricket as we know it. They're not preparing properly, they're not playing properly. Here's Tino, by the way, sorry. Tino
Oh.
Best, say hello. We sort of wrote them off. I had a real fallout with Joe Root, the captain. And so, we came from that to winning, we came from that to winning the match. Memories, I mean, I have to say the World Cup final in Mumbai, this Jayawardene Dhoni match, that was an incredible game of cricket. I do obviously prefer Test cricket, but I love one-day cricket as well. The theatre of that, the T20 final in Calcutta.
Oh yes.
Carlos Brathwaite, Ben Stokes. That was unbelievable. My tour of India, I mean, that will live long in the memory. But the favourite tour of India for me was 1993, which cricket-wise didn't stand out particularly, but it was a tour in which I really got to know that country because there was an airstrike. There was a virtually everything strike, and I don't know what was going on there at the time, but we resorted to having to travel on trains, on buses, and sort of slow cars around the country to get to grounds and places, and that was an amazing. That was my most fun tour that I've ever done as a player or a commentator. It's easier to say that in hindsight than perhaps at the time, because it was a bit of a challenge. But that was a fantastic tour, and even my own. I mean, but my first memory, and I go back to what I was saying earlier about people who just stand up and suddenly get Test cricket, even though in this case is the quietest, or it was the quietest, shyest, humblest man I've possibly ever met, was Muhammad Azharuddin, who I actually became very good friends with over the years. He played at Derbyshire up the road. I know Azhar very well. But of course, I was there. The first match of that tour that I was talking about when I came out as a substitute was his first Test match in Kolkata. And he scored his first 100. Of course, he went to score another 2. And he and I have always remained good friends. I know he's had his ups and downs. But that was someone, again, this incredibly shy man who walked out almost with a bit of a stoop, as if he was always a bit humble and shy, going out to bat. And then this amazing wristy player. And in '93, he had started the tour badly, and we played a one-day international up in the north somewhere, Chandigarh, I think. Came back, we went to Kolkata, I think, and I remember a knock on the door, and we talked about Azhar's form a lot on the radio. So he knocked on my door, and there was Azhar, and he had a bat. And he said, "Don't worry, I've got a new bat. I'm going to be fine now." And he went out and scored a beautiful. I don't know if he got 100 or not in that game. I think he did get 100 actually. It was the game in which England played 4 quick bowlers and India played 4 spinners, and one team got it right and the other didn't. Azhar got 100 with this new bat. But I thought, wow, there's someone who's such a brilliant player, and who, is so talented, and yet it took a new bat for him to believe that he was going to be all right again.
Yeah.
It's really weird. I mean, I've never understood batsmen and how they work, but I've just got so many lovely memories of things that I've done. I'm looking at a photograph here of me interviewing Nelson Mandela, which I can't quite believe as a result of this game, this silly game I'm involved in. I've got a photograph there of meeting Mother Teresa in Calcutta when South Africa toured there for the first time. That was an amazing experience. And it's just looking around and the memories that I have all through being lucky enough to be involved in this great game. And I think what we're lucky in cricket is there's so many strands to cricket now, and they're all as good as each other. T20 cricket is just as good as 50 overs cricket, ODI cricket, which actually is just as good as Test cricket. I know Test cricket is the longer, purer form, if you like, and there's more swings and roundabouts and ebbing and flowing, and it's a better long-term watch. But I think we're very lucky in cricket. There are 3 formats that do all stand up for themselves, and they it's not like watching a reduced like rugby sevens or these games, these formats are all proven quality, and so that's, I hope, will help give cricket its longevity.
Of course. So, and just to, I think it'll not be fair if I didn't mention the tour of India for the English team, which is coming up right now. Just a little bit of a context to this question, sir. In 2015, the English men's team did not have a good World Cup. They exited the World Cup in the group stages, and I personally feel I'm sure that must have been a watershed moment for English cricket at that point in time. Under the captaincy of Owen Morgan, they completely revamped the way they play one day cricket and T20 cricket. And for me personally, they're definitely the best white ball team in the world right now, and arguably one of the best of all times. They certainly are in the conversation. If they manage to clinch one of the two T20 World Cups that are coming up in the next 2 years, they'll definitely have a claim there. Uh, how have you seen this progression? And in the last 15 years, England is the only team which managed to take a series away from India in India. How do you view Joe Root's team's chances here in India?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, I think you're right. There was a lot of priority given to white ball cricket in those few years leading up to the World Cup. And England's last tour of India wasn't a happy experience. They came from Bangladesh, where they got beaten in Dhaka as well. That was the preparation for it. And so they started off on the back foot. Whereas at least this time they're starting off with those 2 wins in Sri Lanka. Now Sri Lanka aren't the best Sri Lankan team we've ever seen in the world, that's for sure. But given the fact that the way England had to go, they lost the toss both times in Gaul, where the ball spins a lot, as we know. So to actually to win 2 tests there, having started from that position, was I think says a lot about their character. There are issues. I think England's spin bowlers, though they haven't had a lot of cricket, I think we've got to throw that in again. However, they've got to bowl a darn sight better in India than they did in Sri Lanka. There was not the pressure. They weren't bowling maidens. Joe Root had to have men out here and there. There were lots of gaps. The Indian batsmen like scoring big runs. And so the Sri Lankans are a bit bish bash, get out. The Indians aren't going to be like that. And so they're just going to happily milk this bowling around, and they're going to get their 150s, 200s if they can. So that's an issue for me. They've got obviously a very good seam attack. How will they fare in India? Well, India's got a good seam attack. I mean, see what the pitches are like, whether there is a little bit more bounce in them. I mean, sometimes in Chipok, the ball can go through a bit. Who knows? But it's the opening batsman again. There's a lot of inexperience there. Really, Sibley got a half century in the last Test match against Sri Lanka, hit the winning runs, but he could have been out 3 times. He got umpire's call 3 times to the same shot and ball he was dismissed in the first innings of that Test. So it suggests there's still that issue there. I would be surprised if England win that series. I'll be honest with you. I'll be surprised if they do. They'd have been away from home a long time. They've been in this bubble for a long time. They can't have families come out and see them. And usually on these tours, there's a break in the middle. You've got your wife and kids and so on coming out, and it's something you look forward to, you focus on. If they don't start well, it's going to be tough because they're going to be in this bubble. There's no escape. And if you are Dom Sibley and you go and get 0-4 in the first Test match, that's a long time sitting in your room. So it's going to be a real management challenge as well. There are players coming and going. Joss Buttler's only playing the first Test match, and he's going back for a break, and that's a shame because I think you've got to try and play your best side. I understand why they're doing it, but you do have to try and play your best side. And someone like Joss perhaps needs to be said to him, listen, Joss, do you want to have Test caps in your bag, or do you want to play IPL? Because he obviously played in the IPL, spent all that time in the bubble, and so that's partly the reason why he's missing out on 3 Test matches in India. Now, as a cricketer, I know what I prefer to have in my bag. Okay, he's got more money in his bank account having played the IPL. But, you look back at your career in 10 years' time and you'll see those 3 tests and they say, Daddy, why didn't you play in those 3 Test matches? Why didn't you play at Ahmedabad in that massive stadium with 100,000 people? And England won it. Why weren't you there? Oh, well, I'd gone home because I've been in the bubble for a while. I know it's different, but I think players are going to have to make some choices as well if this continues for long. But to go back, there's a very long-winded answer to your question. And I think India clearly will start off as very strong favourites. I think Virat might have something he wants to prove as well. He missed those Test matches. He missed one of the most famous Indian Test series wins of all time. And he wasn't there. And I don't know Virat terribly. I've interviewed him a few times. I've brushed alongside, rubbed along with him a few times. I don't think he'll like that very much.
No,
I don't think Virat will like to have taken the back seat for that. And I think he'll come storming back.
Yeah, as Indian fans and of course as Kohli fans, we're all waiting googly-eyed for what the response will be from him. Because as you're saying, true to character, he would want to stamp his authority. He'd want that century, take that helmet off, show off the back of his t-shirt and stuff like that. That's
Oh yeah,
completely Virat for you. And we're hoping has a fantastic record against England post the 2014 debacle that he had in England. So we're hoping some good runs from his end. And as far as the series is concerned, as you said, sir, it's going to be a tough task for England. But we've seen one underdog team actually perform well in conditions that were alien to it in Australia. And so you definitely cannot write this English team off. We're all hoping for a fantastic test series. Test cricket comes back to India after almost 14, 15 months. So that's lovely for us. Lastly, sir, on your Josh Butler point, just a simple request to Mr. Butler there. The Indian tour comes once in 5 years for England team, 4 to 5 years. You play the IPL every year. Maybe you could have taken a little bit of concession because honestly, as Indian fans, also, I personally believe he's one of the best players to spin in your team. So I think
brilliant.
it's going to be a huge loss for the team if when Josh Butler does go.
Very true. Orthodox sweep, reverse sweeps.
Yes, and he can dominate these spinners.
Absolutely.
That's
I
the
mean,
worrying part.
I'm not picking on Josh, but it's just,
Yeah.
There are choices that have to be made, and perhaps it's a shame for the team and a shame for Joe Root that one of their leading players won't be there after the first match, and of course Johnny Bairstow, where he may come back.
He'll come back
So
from the third.
there is some coming and going. So
Yeah.
as I say, I think for this series we have to be a little bit more sort of understanding of it all.
All right. So I've already exceeded the time limit. I've been told a couple of times by Anurag, we did not promise him so much time. Get off the record.
We're only just started.
So I could go on. I'm sure I'll be cutting into your schedule of the day. And once again, our very best to Tino and Bumble. They've enjoyed the session. Hopefully, Tino hasn't complained all that much. And Bumble
there's Bracken there, Nathan Bracken.
So yeah, the names that you've chosen for your pets are legendary. That's epic. And once again, on behalf of the entire Sports Toy team, and of course all of your millions of fans all over India, and believe me, sir, you do have so many people who ardently follow Test cricket just for the likes of you, the likes of David Lloyd himself, and of course all of these Mark Nicholas, wonderful presenters all over the world. We count Harsha Bhogle, Gautam Ivani, and Joy Bhattacharya in those lists here in India. And of course, for us, this is such a huge honor, such a new channel, and such a massive honor that we've gotten you on board. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
It's a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.